What's up, fellas? My name is Tucker. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how the future of Zion Williamson could completely change how the NBA operates. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like rating on it. Consider subscribing for more videos as well. Check out my socials right there. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first things first, I think everybody knows that Zion Williamson had a fantastic season last year, but I'm not sure we're all on the same page about how crazy historic his year was last year. He was 8th in the league in scoring. He averaged 27-7 on 60% shooting. And by the way, he was just 20 years old. And for all you people out there that have been trying to knock him for the injury stuff, he also played in 61 games. So it was an incredible, out of control year for Zion. Statistically, the eye test, you watched him, he made an all-star team. It was just all there for him. And granted, the team wasn't very good, but you have to be excited about what this guy is going to be like as an NBA player, because a lot of the promise that he showed that allowed him to be the first overall pick, he followed through on last year. Now, this is very interesting because Zion is arguably the most hyped up draft prospect that we had seen at the time that he was drafted since LeBron in 2003, and we're already hearing rumors about him being unhappy in New Orleans, which is pretty unprecedented. Like, we've heard, small things coming out about how Trae Young wanted to start winning and just some small things like that, but the Zion stuff seems far more threatening than anything that we've ever heard out of a player on their initial rookie contract. And the impact of those rumors can be seen in how the Pelicans have tried to build a team around him. They started by going with a lot of youth. They traded away Drew Holiday for future assets. They had all these young guys from the Anthony Davis trade. They really focused on younger players, bringing in some veterans at times, guys like JJ Redick. But for the most part, they were going in a younger direction. And then things started to shift, and they've been looking to dump some salary this offseason to go after someone like Kyle Lowry or some kind of big name free agent, hoping to have this Chris Paul-like effect on their roster, because there's clearly talent here, but they needed veteran leadership and they needed direction. And it was clear that the Pelicans wanted to steer this into more of a positive direction from a team success standpoint because they were nervous about Zion. And pretty much nothing that they wanted to happen this offseason actually happened. They lost Lonzo, didn't get a ton in return for him. They got Devontae Graham, but they didn't really improve their roster significantly in any way. But again, I think the big point of this offseason is it's clear that their goal is to get better faster, because if it wasn't, they would have continued to play it slow with the younger guys. And overall, this rebuild has really lacked direction for me personally. Zion's going to be on his third coach in as many years in the league this upcoming season after they fired Stan Van Gundy, which was a disaster of a hire for them. GM David Griffin has got to be feeling the heat at this point, and this uncomfortableness has to be felt more by the Pelicans than any other franchise in the league, because they just lost Anthony Davis, and now they're at risk of Zion Williamson leaving or asking for a trade, which would be unprecedented. There's never been a team that loses two superstar level players like that so quickly in such a short time period, or really ever just in general. And it would be, honestly, like they might just have to move the team if it happens. At this point in the video, I'm sure plenty of you are saying, well, why are we worried about this? He's only been in the league a few years. Guys never leave after a few years. Well, that is exactly the point of the whole video. Typically, this is how it works when a all-star level player is on a rookie contract. They re-sign with their team and they get a significant second contract. And if they do want to leave and they are unhappy, they push that to the side so that they can get their big money on their second contract, and then they ask out while they're on that second contract. For example, Anthony Davis lasted about 6.5 seasons in New Orleans before he requested a trade, and then ultimately in that following offseason ended up with the Lakers. That's how it works, and there's a reason for that. Teams and players are incentivized to stay together when they have immediate success like this, monetarily, as well as just in the leverage that these young players have. Restricted free agency is put in place for exactly situations like this, where you have a big-time player, an all-star level player on a rookie contract in a smaller market like New Orleans that could be looking to go to LA, New York. And the NBA doesn't want all of its big-time players in just a few franchises and just a few cities. They need something to draw in the smaller markets as well. And they were really concerned about big-time players just continually leaving, and that's why restricted free agency was introduced. So after 4 years, even if you're as good as Zion, your ability to leave your current team is very, very limited. What ends up happening is after your 4th season, you become a restricted free agent, and the team can match any offer that any team gives you, right? So for example, a couple years ago, Zach LaVine was a restricted free agent. The Kings threw a really significant offer sheet at him at the time based off what we'd seen from Zach LaVine. The Bulls matched it, and then he continued to stay with Chicago. If he was an unrestricted free agent, he might be on the Sacramento Kings right now. And that is in place so that basically players like Zion don't end up leaving, but there is a way that he can leave after just 5 seasons. In order to become a restricted free agent after your 4th year, a team gives you a qualifying offer. It's a 1-year deal, and that is what keeps you in as a restricted free agent. However, if you're Zion and you sign the qualifying offer, but you don't sign a contract with any other team, and you play out that 5th year on the qualifying offer, you become an unrestricted free agent after your 5th season, which would be way sooner than any other player had ever left after being an all-star with their incumbent team without actually being traded, of course. Now, there's a reason why not only people don't really understand this mechanic, but why you probably never heard of it or haven't heard of it a ton, and that's because it's never happened. No one's ever done it. Luka, we thought maybe might do it. Kristaps Porzingis has been the most threatening of all of them, where he threatened to, if the Mavs didn't give him a max, they went ahead and gave him a max. It's never happened. And the reasons are pretty clear. There are tons and tons of downsides to playing on that 5th year qualifying offer and then becoming an unrestricted free agent. The biggest one, of course, is money. It's another way that the NBA incentivizes and motivates players to stay with their team that drafted them, at least initially, because you can make a ton more money with your initial team, whether it be on the extension as a whole or just the difference in what you're playing on that qualifying offer for 1 year compared to what you could be making on a rookie max, which would be what Zion would get. And depending on if he's like an all-NBA guy over the next couple of seasons, he could be making $35+ million in that 5th year, whereas if he signs a qualifying offer, he'll be making much less than that. So obviously there's a monetary issue here and a significant sacrifice for Zion. Now, what a lot of people will say is, well, he could just go to New York or LA, and the marketing potential that Zion brings with him will allow him to make up that money that he is losing, giving up the qualifying offer, as well as signing what would be a smaller max to go somewhere else in unrestricted free agency, which is true. However, there's no guarantee that Zion would become an unrestricted free agent after 5 years, because if that's what happens, let's fast forward a couple of years. Let's say Zion signs the qualifying offer and he goes into his 5th season, and after that season, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. There is a 0% chance that the Pelicans let Zion Williamson, if he continues on this current trajectory, leave for nothing. So what would probably end up happening is he would request a trade in that 5th season. The Pelicans would grant that request because they don't want to lose him for nothing. He does what every other big-time star in the league does. He uses the leverage of his unrestricted free agency to get to where he wants to go, whether that be New York, whether that be LA, because he tells the other teams in the league, I'm not going to re-sign with y'all anyway, so don't even try it. And then he gets traded, and he ends up on a team that he wants to be earlier than he would have been if he signed that second contract. But that team that he goes to would be weakened by the trade package they would have to send back to New Orleans, which of course would be very, very significant. And then not the least of which, in terms of downsides for Zion specifically, is the injury stuff. Every team in the league right now, if they had the opportunity to, would give Zion Williamson as much money as the CBA allows them to if he became an unrestricted free agent tomorrow. Every team in the league would. However, if we're fast forwarding a couple of years, there is no guarantee that those couple of years don't include some kind of injury that is significant or just a couple of nagging injuries, and to the point where people are concerned about his longevity. And that could cause not only his value to decrease on the open market, but could also increase his incentive for signing whatever max contract the Pelicans give him as a rookie extension, and then go and do what every other big time player does. You play on that second contract for a couple of years, and then you start to become unhappy and you ask out. Now, all of this is assuming that the Pelicans continue to struggle to put the proper team around Zion, and they cannot figure out a way to build a solid quality team around him. But given how David Griffin's GM tenure to this point in New Orleans has gone, I think that's a pretty safe assumption. Now, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Zion does exactly what I've outlined. After 4 years, signs a qualifying offer, becomes an unrestricted free agent going into his 5th season. That would be game-changing for the league. For a guy that good to try and get out of his initial team that quickly not only speaks to the disaster that is the Pelicans franchise and the likely move from New Orleans that would then follow suit, but it also would create a really, really interesting dynamic amongst rookies and the teams that drafted them, where maybe we wouldn't see as many Oklahoma City style rebuilds or the process style rebuilds, where as soon as you draft a guy, if they become really good as fast as Luka and Zion have, you're immediately concerned about them leaving after 4 seasons or requesting a trade after 4 or 5 seasons, and you're immediately on the clock. And you could argue that that would actually be a positive thing for the league and for the health of the NBA as a whole, because there wouldn't be as many complete teardown rebuilds, because there would be such an emphasis on you get the big time guy within a year or two, he's an all-star caliber player. Okay, we need to capitalize on that and we need to be good right now. And you could argue that that would be a good thing for the league. But again, it goes back to the reason that restricted free agency exists in the first place, and that is to keep these players with these smaller market teams. They don't want the big market, small market gap in terms of advantages for the bigger market teams to get any bigger than it already is. As much as they really want every single year, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Knicks, the Bulls, as much as they want all those teams to be the top teams in the conference every single year from a monetary perspective, they don't want those to be the only teams and the only stars. So there's a reason restricted free agency exists, and even though there could be positives here that come from this, less rebuilds, less tanking, I'm not positive that it would be a good thing for the league overall if Zion did this and then other players followed suit. All of this really comes down to how badly Zion wants to leave New Orleans, because there's a lot of things that he would be giving up and sacrificing to get out of there a year and a half, 2 years earlier than any other star would at that point. Like I said, Anthony Davis left after about 6.5 seasons. And the only way that New Orleans can prevent Zion wanting to leave that badly, apart from him just not wanting to live in New Orleans, is to make the team better. That's all they have to do. They have to make a competent team that can get to the playoffs, that has a ceiling beyond that. And right now, when you look at the roster, I think it's questionable if they're going to have the ability to get there. Talent is really not an issue with this group. I mean, Zion and Brandon Ingram as individual players at their ages are fantastic, especially offensively. And they've got a couple of other players that can be interesting. I like the Jonas Valanciunas addition. They've got a couple of guards that are interesting. Some of the guys they drafted in this class are interesting, but they need to start taking some steps forward, whether that be with their roster and bringing in some veterans like they try to do this offseason, or for the young guys to continue to step up. And it all falls for me on the defensive side of the floor. I think the Pelicans can, in the right circumstances, be one of the better offensive teams in the entire league once they kind of figure out the spacing and how to get Ingram and Zion to play well together. But if those guys aren't defending, if they're not guarding as a unit, and they're one of the worst 10 defensive teams in the league every year, whatever they do on offense is not going to matter. They're not going to make the playoffs in the West, and the Zion thing is going to get worse and worse and worse. So at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to for New Orleans, is if you don't want to risk this really scary scenario where Zion could potentially be leaving after just a couple of seasons with the team, and then there could possibly be, a trade request on his part, and you just went through all this stuff with the Anthony Davis trade, you just got to make the team better. And I think we've seen in some of these moves recently that they are actively trying to do that. The last thing I would mention here, though, with the Zion situation is, are we positive? Are we absolutely sure that the Brandon Ingram Zion thing worked? I'm just saying, I think that Brandon Ingram thinks that he's the best offensive player on the team, and I don't think that's true. I think Zion's better. I think Zion has a higher ceiling. Brandon Ingram is a very nice player, especially for his age. But if we're dealing with two primarily on-ball guys, does that Brandon Ingram thing work? Do we possibly see Ingram being shopped around for some of the other, bigger stars across the league, or as a part of maybe a small bit of a reset now that Ingram is on a bigger contract? If it comes down to it, you've got to believe that they are going to pick Zion over Brandon Ingram, but that's just the last point that I would think about and I would consider for New Orleans. But ultimately, and you guys can kind of feel the weight of all of this on New Orleans, the weight of just having lost Anthony Davis, of having Zion fall into their laps because of lottery luck, and getting all this stuff back in the Anthony Davis trade, all the stuff they had going for them. If they screw this up too, and they had, such an advantage across, compared to so many other teams when it came to rebuilding, because they had Ingram, they had Zion, and they have all these future picks and these other assets they got in the Davis trade. For them to still screw it up and not be a really competitive team would be a disaster. And I'm not kidding. Like, it's not a joke. I would not be surprised at all if that led to the Pelicans playing in a different city. Like, I think that's honestly where the stakes are, is if they mess this up, we might be having a team in Seattle, and New Orleans might not be hosting a basketball team anymore. I'm not kidding about that. And yeah, that's going to be the end of today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like rating on it. Consider subscribing for more videos as well. Check out my socials at the top of the screen as well. Once again, my name is Tucker. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.